You guys have probably heard of Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's probably the most famous personal finance book ever written. Millions of copies sold, credited with changing how an entire generation thinks about money. But I study economics and have been passionate about investing for a while now. So, to be very honest, I kind of already knew most of these concepts. Nonetheless, I'm going to break down the book and what Robert Kiyosaki says in the book. So, the book teaches six core lessons. Rather than summarize the book, I want to focus on the ideas that matter most for students and test them against what we know from economics. So, firstly, assets versus liabilities. An asset is something that puts money in your account, and a liability is something that takes money out of it. Second, the rich make money work for them. One of his most famous quotes. Most people work for money, but the wealthy acquire assets that generate income. Wealth inequality is driven primarily by differences in capital ownership, not salary differences. Thirdly, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. This is basic business economics. Income minus expenses equals savings. Savings invested equals wealth. The rate of saving matters more than the level of income over the long term. So, those are his three key points, if I had to summarize. But where I believe he oversimplifies, and especially for students, from a student lens, is firstly, he implies real estate is always the best asset class. For students, I don't think so. Well, first of all, normal students don't have that kind of money. For a student, a diversified index fund is probably a better first investment. By all means, you could invest in a REIT if you'd like, a real estate investment trust. I might be wrong, but this is how I see it for students. I mean, I personally don't have hundreds of thousands ready to deploy to buy an apartment, for example. Robert Kiyosaki mentions fear and greed, that fear and greed control financial decisions. And that's so true. Behavioral economics studies this and it has given it precise names. Fear leads to loss aversion, and greed maps to overconfidence and herd behavior. The safe path he describes, go to school, get a job, buy a house, is really status quo bias. The safe path he describes, go to school, get a job, buy a house, is really status quo bias. So all he says is true and scientifically validated and worth really looking into for your life. So, the reality check for students. The value of Robert Kiyosaki's book is that he makes people question default assumptions about money. If you haven't read the book, I really suggest you do, as it's really easy to understand, and the storytelling aspect really puts things into perspective. If you're smart, ambitious, and still unsure what to prioritize, this is for you. I'm opening a waitlist for Behind the Scenes Blueprint Lab, where I share the exact systems I used to juggle internships, studies, building, investing, fitness, and social life in my 20s. Tools that start from where you are, not where you should be. Join using the link in the description.